are the secrets for a long-lasting, healthy relationship when you're an intuitive, empathic person? Hi, my name is Leah Chantel. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm talking about how do we have long-lasting, healthy relationships as intuitive empaths? What are the secrets that help us be true to ourselves and keep our relationships going? And I'll start first of all by saying that there is more than one type of intuitive and empath. And although we all have similar beliefs in spirit and in intuition, we can be all over the map in terms of our maturity in having relationships. So some of us have very sensitive hearts, and if we know how to use them appropriately in our relationships, we can have amazing, long-lasting, healthy relationships. However, if we don't know how to use our hearts appropriately in our relationships, they can actually sabotage our relationships if we're not careful. So how do we prevent that from happening? What are the secrets to having healthy, long-lasting relationships as intuitive empaths? So the first key that I want to stress when you're developing a long-lasting, healthy relationship is that you have to be able to trust the person that you're in relationship with. And what do I mean by that? So we can be very negative and very suspicious around new people. We might think they're not part of the same group as us, they don't have the same beliefs as us. And I've even experienced this as an intuitive empath myself. I've had a very interesting life where I'm also an intelligent person. I've worked in very scientific positions in my past, in my work. And then I'll show up at intuitive empathic events and I'll tell people I'm a data scientist or something like that. And then they don't trust me. They think I'm totally intellectual, which, I mean, it's true. I do have a strong intellect, but then I'm also very intuitive and empathic, probably more so than, left-brained. So the interesting thing about intuitive empaths is they won't trust new people in their lives who appear to be logical, but they sometimes trust the wrong people. Like, they could be other intuitive empaths, but they may not be very emotionally mature in their relationships. And so they automatically assume that they can trust another person based on their belief system or based on where they come from. But that's not necessarily true. There are a lot of logical people who are great supporters of intuitive empaths like us, and we can build healthy relationships with them. And maybe we have a little bit of a left brain characteristic in our personality ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to learn to balance that with your intuition so it doesn't get in the way of living your charmed life. So the first thing is you have to have trust, regardless of whether the person has the same beliefs as you or they have different beliefs than you. You have to have a very strong foundation of trust. And what goes into trust? That means you're not checking up on them or where they're going when they leave your presence. You're not using GPS tracking apps to see where are they going or what are they doing. You're not following them or checking out the places that they're visiting or the places that they work or asking them what they're doing and texting constantly when they're out. You're leaving them alone. You let them have their own space in their own life, and they should be providing you the same courtesy. If they're texting you, asking you where you are or who you're with suspiciously, then that's also not healthy. So trust has to be the number one thing. And if you don't have that, you don't really have a healthy, long-lasting relationship, and it's better to let that person go, And if you're the one with the problem, you need to find a way to focus on other things so that you're not obsessively tracking what the other person is doing. So the next tip for a long-lasting, healthy relationship is that you need to listen to the other person first. And of course you want them to listen to you, but you have to really listen deeply to them first. So when they're talking to you about something, even if it seems unfair or painful, or you want to react, the best thing to do is to stay quiet, stay in control emotionally, and listen. And pause and really think about how you're going to respond. So don't think about it while they're talking. Always listen when they're talking, and don't focus on your own thoughts until they've stopped talking. And then when they've stopped talking, take a minute to formulate your thoughts and be calm If you're upset and you need a moment to reformulate your response, take a moment and ask to go for a walk or whatever. But be aware also that when you're an empathic person and you need to take space and you're dealing with a logical person, they'll usually give you a lot of space, more than you expect. But having said that, sometimes that's what you need to do in order to formulate the right response, because you need that space in order to breathe and think it through before you respond, because you could respond the wrong way, right? So when you've taken that time to respond, and then you respond appropriately after you've fully listened and given your presence to the other person, that's when you're most likely to have a positive rapport, and you're going to build a relationship that's solid and that's going to last. The next thing you want to do is respect each other. And be aware that sometimes people are a little silly and they'll do things that are a little bit disrespectful from time to time. And the best thing, if they're only being slightly disrespectful and they're just kind of being silly, the best way to respond usually is to ignore that. Let's say, for example, they are on their phone a lot and they are messaging people they're not supposed to. Probably the best way to react is to just not react at all and let them have their little silliness and their little fun on their phone. As long as they're not doing anything too damaging, if it's minor, it's not worth getting upset about. So it's best to be calm, and they'll respect that in you when you are calm and you don't take things too seriously and you have emotional control and self-discipline. And then they'll respond to you with that same respect. And they shouldn't be bugging you when you're on your phone either. They should be trusting you. And in this day and age, it's actually so easy to not trust because there are so many digital distractions, and yet it's so key to build that trust and to not, disrespect each other. So the minute you accuse someone of being untrustworthy, you're kind of disrespecting them, and then the relationship starts to erode. If you really feel that somebody's being disrespectful and they're playing too many games, then you just got to decide if the relationship is over or not. You step out with 2 feet and don't leave 1 foot in the door, because that's just going to erode your relationship. So when people are being disrespectful, you have to make a decision whether or not you're going to leave. And you can also set boundaries. So if somebody is doing something uncomfortable in the room, if they're saying something disrespectful to you, you can ask to leave the room. Those are steps you can take actually to protect your energy a little bit, protect your self-respect, that aren't a full I'm going to cut off the relationship, it's over, But there are these little in-between boundary steps. They are little risks that you take, and sometimes people don't respond well to them and they do threaten to break off the relationship. But if they're disrespectful to you, the relationship's already at risk. So you need to take a step back and assess the situation when you're in those problems or problematic situations, to see if you can really continue the relationship. And often these little problems that pop up, you can continue the relationship. That's the good news. But you need to have your self-respect, and you need to be able to stand up for yourself in those moments and have your boundaries in order to continue. And if you can do that, then probably your relationship will do well and it will recover just fine. There are always these little conflicts, even in very long-term successful marriages. People will have conflict, and as long as you're able to set boundaries and resolve your conflicts in a healthy way that's respectful of each other, then you'll be able to continue building your long-lasting relationships. And then my last tip for intuitive empaths, in order to have long-lasting, successful, healthy relationships, is they need to be self-aware. What type of empath are you? Are you the jealous type? Are you the one who has trouble controlling their heart or controlling their emotions? Are you easily hurt when somebody does something that's even slightly, remotely disrespectful, like look at another person in a certain way, If you have those tendencies, you need to be self-aware, and you need to journal about them and write them down and figure out productive ways to deal with your emotions if they're really raw and hot, or if you're a woman and you're on your period, you need to have strategies to kind of help you cope in those moments. And men have those kinds of moments too. It may not be exactly the same, but men have emotions too. So you have to decide how you're going to handle your emotions in those moments where they feel hot. And we all have those emotions from time to time where we feel very tense or very passionate or very afraid. And we have to decide what we're going to do with our intense emotions rather than react and jump on them in the moment, because we're wired to do that actually. We're wired to respond to threats like saber-toothed tigers, but in this day and age, the threat might be a certain look that your partner is giving to another person, and you don't really want to respond to that like a saber-toothed tiger, you know what I mean? You may feel that emotionally, but you have to figure out, okay, how am I actually going to respond to this in a productive way, And a lot of the times these little upsets can be ignored, and usually they go away. But if they don't go away, then you may need to set a boundary or figure something out that's appropriate in order for your relationship to be healthy and to continue long term. I hope you all found these tips helpful. Are you building healthy long-term relationships with different kinds of people? What kinds of people are you building relationships with, and who has turned out to be the most loyal, the most trustworthy, the people who listen? I'm always curious to find that out, because it's not always who we think it is. I mean, it's good to connect with other intuitives and empaths, but sometimes they're not actually our ultimate soul family. Sometimes people who are a little bit left-brained can be amazing soul family and support for us, depending on who they are and where they come from in life. We don't have to limit ourselves to everybody who's just like us and is a sounding board of what we believe. There are amazing people out there from all walks of life. And if we open up our minds and our hearts to them, then we can find them. I hope you're all having an amazing week, and I can't wait to talk to you next time. Bye.